Hey, good afternoon. Since I know many of you are interested in White House personnel issues, we wanted to take a few minutes to discuss the historic obstruction that we have faced by Senator Schumer and Senate Democrats in confirming our nominees to enable us to fill out our White House. The Senate obviously has the constitutional responsibility for advice and consent. So what that looks like in real life is the president selects a nominee. They then undergo an entire FBI background check. They work with the Office of Government Ethics to deconflict financial issues. And that's a process that takes a good amount of time, a good amount of resources. Only then, after cleared through an FBI background check and the Office of Government Ethics, is a nominee submitted to the United States Senate. When they get to the Senate, they go through several additional evaluations, including meetings with staff, meetings with the members on both sides of the aisle. The nominee then undergoes a hearing, and the committee then votes on the nominee to get out of that committee. At that point, the nominee moves to the Senate floor for full confirmation. Traditionally, the Senate routinely confirms an administration's nominees once out of committee. It is there to respect the will of the American people and the election for an administration to fill out its roles under a new president. Instead, what Senator Schumer has done is to require cloture votes to essentially slow down the process and to obstruct. At this point, in the past 4 administrations combined, the last 4 administrations, the Senate had conducted 17 cloture votes combined. Cloture vote, in essence, being a filibuster on a nominee. 17 cloture votes in the last 4 administrations combined at this point. Today, the Senate has had 79 cloture votes in the first 14 months of our administration. 17 over the last 4 administrations versus 79 in the first 14 months of our administration. That is roughly 5 times the number of the last 4 administrations combined. Senator Schumer is essentially weaponizing a Senate procedure and demanding cloture votes on our nominees that he even eventually supports. 11 of the president's nominees have been approved without a single dissenting vote, yet still forced to go through a 30 hours of debate to essentially slow down the Senate calendar simply for the purpose of obstruction. Even Senate Democrats have begun to call this out and to say it is getting to the point of ridiculous. At this rate, the United States Senate would take 11 and a half years to confirm our nominees. 11 and a half years to confirm our nominees. So let me give you one more example of the comparison historically. In the first entire term of the George H.W. Bush administration, his entire 4 years, he faced 1 cloture vote. In the entire 4 years of the Clinton administration, he faced 10 cloture votes. Under the George W. Bush administration, the entire first term, he faced 4 cloture votes. Barack Obama faced 17 in his first entire 4 years. We have faced 79 in our first 14 months. That adds up to 32 combined in the entire first 4 years of those administrations, relative to 79 in our first less than a year and a half. So let me give a couple more illustrations of specific individuals. Pat Pizzella is our nominee to be the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Labor. We still do not have a Deputy Secretary, a number 2 person at the Department of Labor. Pat Pizzella was nominated 269 days ago. He was reported out of committee in October. He was confirmed in the George W. Bush administration by a unanimous voice vote. So he's already been confirmed by a previous Congress without any dissension. And yet, 269 days later, we still do not have a Deputy Secretary at the Department of Labor. At the EPA, Deputy Administrator Andrew Wheeler. He was nominated 152 days ago. Scott Pruitt still to this day does not have a deputy, a number 2 serving at the EPA. He was reported out of committee in November. Yalim Poblit will be Assistant Secretary for Arms Control at the Department of State when confirmed. Obviously, arms control is an important issue for national security and particularly heightened in light of upcoming negotiations with North Korea. She was nominated 298 days ago and has been previously a staff director of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Isabel Patalunas, nominated 270 days ago, reported out of committee in July, has been nominated to be Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Intelligence and Analysis. This helps work with many of the sanctions that you have covered. So many of these positions, in fact, are national security positions. And lastly, Kevin McAleenan, to be Commissioner of the Customs and Border Patrol, was nominated 298 days ago. Obviously, it's been a priority of this administration to highlight the security threats we face at our southern border. Kevin, in taking that role, will be safeguarding our borders and helping to prevent terrorists and contraband from entering the United States. Yet Congress and the Senate continues to dither and not have a confirmation vote. We're pleased that he finally got through a cloture vote last week. We expect him to be confirmed on Monday night, but 298 days later, as the American people have been anxious to make sure that our borders being secured, we still don't have a head of Customs and Border Patrol. So this level of obstruction is beyond historic. It is something that, as you, I know, are very focused on personnel inside the White House. We ask that you also shed light on the historic obstruction that's happened in the United States Senate to make sure that we are able to fill out our administration to do the job of the American people and to help make sure that our country is safe and secure.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Thanks for coming out. You mentioned the plight of your nominee at the State Department for the arms control position, and you mentioned the need for having that person for the upcoming negotiations with North Korea. Yet you still do not have a nominee to be the U.S. ambassador to South Korea. Why is that? When will you have that nominee? And is that position also important for your efforts?
Sure. I think that there's been several conversations about that internally with putting forward nominees that as they go through that process, in many cases it gets so delayed and so long that nominees have withdrawn from the process before actually being submitted to the Senate. So there's a couple examples where that's happened recently. That includes that post, but we've been having ongoing conversations about nominating someone soon. Yeah.
On Rick Grinnell, the ambassador, president's nominee for ambassador to Germany, which senator is actually holding out the nomination, withholding unanimous consent? And why doesn't Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell just, and is there any reason given for withholding unanimous consent? And why doesn't Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell just force a vote on the nominee?
Thanks. Mary Elizabeth is one of the stars on our team who's been with us from day one, and she helped to staff Justice Gorsuch through confirmation, helped to shepherd him through, and is the one in charge of our nominations. So I'm going to phone a friend on that one. But Grinnell got out of committee, right? And so basically he's waiting for a final vote on the Senate floor.
Yes.
And so that, I believe he got out of committee several months back. So he's another one that should be on our list of those that has been waiting. The challenge that Leader McConnell faces when you're not allowed to just bring up for a voice vote, you have to go through a cloture, then he has to prioritize these. And that is one more of our nominees that simply has been historically obstructed. Yeah.
Well, thanks. You know well what goes on the Hill. This is part of the toxic nature that's been going on for several years. I mean, the Democrats are pushing back because of the Republicans. What are you doing to ease or water down that toxicity? What can you do? And secondly, explain to those who don't understand how it is that a minority party, when you control both the Congress, both the House and the Senate, how you're unable to get it through, because that is one of the big stumbling blocks for people to understand why you're complaining.
Right. Well, I think that the reality is that this is a Senate process. It's not a House process. But as you nominate a candidate to the Senate for a personnel issue, the Senate has the ability to go through the nomination process, the committee process, but it requires a supermajority to get past the motion to proceed. And what the Senate has done is they've basically said, we're going to require a cloture vote on these nominees, where historically, once out of committee, they would bring it to the Senate floor, they would just require an up or down vote. And you say that it's part of the toxicity that's been going on for some time. I think that's the point we're trying to make, is this hasn't been going on for some time. This has not been the tradition of the United States Senate to do what they're doing right now under Senator Schumer. It has not happened. It's the numbers I went through. We faced, again, 4 times the number of cloture votes in 14 months in the last 4 terms combined, the last 16 years of the first term of the presidency. So this is not what's historically been done.
See it as a reflection of, for example, when Obama was in office and the Republicans said they're going to make it their prime concern not to pass any legislation that Obama favored. Don't you see that as part of the problem?
I think part of the challenge is the American people got so frustrated with the way that Washington worked that they elected an outsider to come to Washington to try to help fix it. What we're trying to do is to shed light on the way that this town works and the way that currently the United States Senate is broken. And yes, we are assigning that blame to Senator Schumer and his team of Democrats because in many cases, even the fellow Democrats are saying the level of this is getting absurd and it's time that we allow the president to fill out his administration.
Republicans don't bear any of the blame?
I think the reality is the Republicans are moving forward for these votes. I do think as far as one of the solutions, this is going to be obviously an issue for the United States Senate, but I do think that that this will force pressure to continue to see more rules changes in the United States Senate.
Mark, specifically, Mark, does the president still feel, do you feel that Rule 22 should be amended or eliminated to prevent what you're describing, which are national security ramifications? I mean, you have a number of positions that you are arguing are essential to the national security of the United States, and you say that this is something that Democrats are obstructing to. Republicans have 51 votes. What should happen?
I think that the United States Senate is going to continue to have internal conversations about potential rule changes, and I think it's a very fair question. I want to be very respectful of having a White House determine what the United States Senate rules should be, but I think by continuing to highlight it and recognize the level of obstruction, I think it continues to put more pressure on the Senate to address this internally.
Are you concerned, by the way, well, I was just going to ask if you're concerned that this obstruction will carry over to the nominee for Secretary of State, the nominee for the CIA director.
Thanks. I think that obviously the current director of the CIA is somebody who is incredibly qualified. As people know, he was graduated top of his class at West Point, graduated top of his class at Harvard Law School. I think has done a phenomenal job as director of the CIA. And when he went through that process, earned bipartisan support to be director of the CIA. So we would certainly hope that, considering only 14 months ago, 15 Senate Democrats crossed over to support his nomination, that they would also support his nomination to be Secretary of State. Likewise, we feel that Gina is uniquely qualified as somebody who has served in the CIA for 33 years, has been a station chief in multiple localities, has been commended by Democrats and Republicans alike for those that she served under in previous administrations. I think that she has incredible qualities. We're very excited about her nomination. We're excited that she would be the first female director of the CIA, and we would expect a quick hearing and moving forward with the vote because these are very critical national security positions.
Mark, has the president had any personal conversations with Senator Schumer about this obstruction, in your words, specifically, as he's been having conversations about infrastructure and other matters? Has he had Senate Democrats over here? And why haven't we heard more from him talking about this? And also, do you believe that, just given the backlog here, how many more confirmation hearings can this Senate withstand as it leads to other potential personnel announcements that we may or may not be seeing in the coming days here?
I think I think the president has been vocal about this. I think that perhaps I'm a warm-up act for him making a larger foray into this to make his case to the American people that the obstruction has gotten ridiculous. And yes, he's also spoken to Senator Schumer about his frustration with it.
Is there the possibility that the president could offer something, make a deal where not everyone gets what they want, but has he offered anything to Senator Schumer in exchange for helping get some of these nominations through?
I guess it's hard for me to understand what it is that we should be offering when the American people elect a president, elect a new administration to come in, and the expectation is they should be able to fill out their administration. The Senate has an advise and consent role, but why should we be offering making a deal on something that should be the normal process of the United States Senate? For us, that would be kind of hard to understand.
I mean, in his conversations on DACA, has there been any suggestion, we would make some concessions on DACA if you help get some of our nominations through?
I think on DACA, the president's been very clear that he wants to make a deal. I think he put forward a very rational proposal, one that even provided a pathway to citizenship for 1.8 million people. I think we're frustrated that so far Democrats don't seem to actually want to come to the table. They want to politicize the issue. We stand ready to make a deal on that. But again, I reject the notion that this is something that should be offered for them just doing their job. They should just do the job for the American people. It shouldn't be something we have to barter in order for them to just do what they're supposed to do.
On DACA, is there room for a smaller deal? Are you working a smaller deal now? One that doesn't have all four pillars, but that might be part of the omnibus?
As I said, the president has been very open to continue negotiations on this. He's anxious to get a deal. He believes that it's important to secure our border, but he also believes passionately that these are people who have been in our country working productively, and in order to get a DACA permit, have been obeying the law. So he wants to protect them. We're anxious to find a way to get a deal.
That's a yes.
Please.
Thanks. Just to be clear, Mark, do the challenges of getting personnel cleared through the U.S. Congress prevent the president from changing the makeup of his cabinet right now if he wanted to?
No, I think, I believe that the president always has the ability to make the changes that he wants, and I don't think that when he's ready to make a change, he'll do that. I'm not sure that he's worried about what that process is, but again, I think our challenge our requirement is to put forward quality people, and if you look at Gina and Director Pompeo, they're incredibly qualified. We think they'll make enormous contributions to the administration and for the American people, and so we certainly hope the United States Senate will confirm them quickly.
One follow-up
Thank you.
on that.
Thanks for coming.